Right now, somewhere in your house, there is an object you would fight to keep. Maybe it's a phone. Maybe it's a photo. Maybe it's something small and worthless to anyone else, but not to you. You call it yours. You barely question why. But that single word, mine, is one of the strangest inventions in human history. It isn't written into your DNA the way hunger is, or fear is. It had to be built. And the story of how it was built explains almost everything about how you live today. So where did it come from? For most of human history, the concept barely existed. Early hunter-gatherer groups, moving in small bands of 20 to 50 people, had almost nothing that could be called private property. Anthropologist James Woodburn spent years studying groups like the Hadza in Tanzania, one of the last remaining hunter-gatherer societies on Earth. His research revealed something surprising. When a hunter brought back meat, it wasn't kept. It was shared immediately across the entire camp, following strict unspoken rules everyone understood. Nobody owned the kill. Everybody owned the outcome. Why would evolution favor giving things away? Because for nearly 200,000 years, sharing wasn't generosity. It was survival insurance. A single hunt could fail for days. Meat spoiled fast in the heat. If you kept everything you caught, you starved during your unlucky streaks. If you shared, someone else fed you during theirs. Researchers call this system generalized reciprocity, and it functioned almost like a biological bank account. Except the currency was food, and the interest was staying alive. Ownership, in the modern sense, wasn't just unnecessary. It was dangerous. So what changed? Around 12,000 years ago, something happened that rewired human society from the ground up. Agriculture. For the first time, people didn't just find food. They grew it in one place over months. And that changed the entire logic of possession. Archaeologist Ian Hodder, known for his decades of excavation at Çatalhöyük in modern-day Turkey, uncovered one of the earliest large farming settlements ever found. What he discovered wasn't just crops. It was walls, storage rooms, boundaries between homes. For the first time in the archaeological record, humans were drawing hard lines around resources and around themselves. Think about what that actually required. A field of wheat takes months to grow. If it belongs to everyone equally, who protects it while it grows? Who decides who gets the harvest? Suddenly, land wasn't just a place to walk through. It was something you had invested in, something you could lose. And once you can lose something, you start defending it. This is where the idea of mine stopped, being a feeling, and became a system. Economist and anthropologist Karl Polanyi argued that early property systems weren't really about greed. They were about predictability. If everyone knew which field belonged to which family, conflict decreased. Disputes had a framework. Instead of constant renegotiation over shared resources, ownership created boundaries that reduced violence, at least in theory. Mine wasn't just selfish. It was, in a strange way, an early form of social technology invented to keep peace inside a species that was no longer wandering, in small trusting bands, but living in dense, permanent settlements full of strangers. But something else happened once property existed. Inequality followed almost immediately. If land could be owned, some families ended up with better land. If harvests could be stored, some families stored more. Archaeological evidence from early farming villages shows houses of dramatically different sizes appearing within the same settlements, some containing luxury goods, others containing almost nothing. For the first time in human history, your birth, not just your effort, began to determine what you would own. The idea of mine had created something entirely new. Not just possession, but hierarchy. And once hierarchy exists, it needs to be justified. This is where laws entered the picture. Some of the earliest written legal codes in human history, like the Code of Hammurabi in ancient Babylon, dedicate enormous portions of text to something very specific. Property disputes. Who owns which field? What happens if livestock wanders onto someone else's land? What punishment fits theft? These weren't abstract philosophical questions. They were urgent, practical problems, because once ownership existed, so did the possibility of someone taking what wasn't theirs. Here's the strange part. Even your brain seems to have adapted to this shift. Psychologist Peter Blake ran experiments studying children as young as 2 years old and found something remarkable. Even before they can fully speak in sentences, children display a fierce, almost automatic sense of possession. This is mine, they insist, often over objects that were never legally theirs to begin with. Some researchers believe this isn't purely cultural. It may be a psychological reflex shaped by thousands of years of a species, where holding onto resources meant holding on to survival. You aren't just taught to feel ownership. Some part of you may be built to feel it. So the next time you feel a small flash of protectiveness over something small, a seat, a parking spot, a favorite mug at work, you're not just being petty. You're activating a system your ancestors spent thousands of years building, refining, and passing down. A system that started as walls around a wheat field in ancient Turkey. A system that reshaped entire societies, created the first laws, and eventually created the concept of wealth itself. There's something almost unsettling about realizing that one of your most basic instincts, the instinct to claim something as yours, wasn't always there. It had to be invented, slowly, painfully, through scarcity, storage, and settlements, until eventually it became so deeply woven into human behavior that even a 2-year-old understands it without ever being taught. You didn't invent the idea of mine. Your ancestors did, out of necessity, thousands of years before you were born. And in a very real sense, every time you say that word today, you're not just describing an object. You're carrying forward one of the oldest social inventions your species ever made.